Hey Jackets fans, and welcome to Boom and Gloom, the Columbus Blue Jackets fan podcast, where I discuss the good, the boom, and the gloom, the bad, of CBJ hockey. And as we all know, we have a whole lot of gloom to talk about right now. A heck of a lot. In fact, I'll be honest here, this whole episode is going to be like, it's going to be probably going to be a hitch fest. Now, I pride myself on making this podcast family friendly, so when I say hitch fest, replace the H with a B, and you'll understand what this episode is going to be like. But I'll get to that. I didn't introduce myself to anyone who might be listening for the first time. My name is Anthony. I go by Whaler Jacket on social media, and I am North America's longest suffering hockey fan. And I truly believe that. But notice I didn't say North America's longest suffering sports fan. Okay, I said specifically hockey fan. All right. I truly believe no one as passionate about hockey as I am has suffered more or as much as I have, as long or as much as I have. Okay, being a fan of the Hartford Whalers and now the Columbus Blue Jackets, it has been absolute torture. I turned 50 years old this year, and I've been following NHL hockey since 1986, and I've never seen my favorite team get past the first round of the playoffs. I've only seen one first-round victory in 40 years. 40 years as a fan. And I'm positive it was 1986 that I became a true NHL fan or a true Whaler fan, because that's the year I started liking the hometown Whalers in Connecticut. Now, my family, diehard Ranger family, all right? Well, my dad got to meet a Ranger during the 1985-1986 season by the name of Mark Osborne. So he was immediately my favorite player, of course, and I started watching hockey about that time, and I somehow got hooked on the Whalers instead of the Rangers. Anyway, I digress. Okay, so when I say I am North America's longest suffering hockey fan, I mean it. But I can't say I'm America's longest suffering sports fan, because there are some poor souls out there who claim not only the Blue Jackets as their favorite hockey team, but the Browns as their favorite football team, and the Reds as their favorite baseball team. I can't compete with that heartache, not one bit. You guys are the true suffering fans, the true heroes for putting up with that, multiple inept teams. But anyway, now that I gave you a little background about me, let's dive into the garbage dump that is, or was, the Blue Jackets season. And fair warning, this is most likely going to be my longest episode ever. I have a lot to say, a lot to complain about, and I apologize because I'm going to be kind of all over the place, all right? Because I have a ton of different topics to talk about, and I couldn't think of a logical way to organize it into a listener-friendly podcast format. So you've been warned, okay? So here we go. Just 11 games ago, and maybe it's 12. It's a blur, okay? The Blue Jackets were in second place in the Metropolitan Division, fifth place in the Eastern Conference, number 6 in those NHL power rankings that they have out there on the internet, and they were given by several different experts, at least that I saw, anywhere from an 84 to a 90% chance of making the playoffs at that point. They were in the driver's seat. They were making noise. They had momentum. They even garnered national attention because they were the NHL's hottest team. And then I guess they remembered they were the Blue Jackets. To go from second place in a division and fifth in a conference to not making the playoffs in a span of 11 games is impressive. Impressively bad, even by Blue Jacket standards. And that's the sad thing, all right? I mean, this has been the standard for the better part of 25 years. I know it's different teams, different rosters, different general managers, different coaches, but it seems to be the standard. The team always seems to find new ways to disappoint their very loyal fan base. Now, I want to say, not bragging or tooting my own horn here, just saying, if you go back to my season preview, my first episode of the season, I predicted the Jackets would just miss the playoffs again this season. And man, sometimes I hate being right. But what can I say? After 25 years of mediocrity and despair, I know this team all too well. And I actually thought I was wrong about a lot of things. I actually, made an episode about that a few episodes back, how, I thought I was wrong all along. But what, after Rick Bowness was hired, things were great, right? I thought I was wrong. But it turns out I was right all along. And what makes it worse is that I started to believe, okay? I knew they were the Blue Jackets. I knew deep down they were going to disappoint us. But I started to believe. I bought into the hope. But you can't blame me, right? I mean, after 25 years of calling this pathetic franchise my favorite, I was due for some hope. Okay, overdue is probably a better term. So that false hope just made this epic collapse even worse. If they had just sucked all year, I think I would have felt a lot better. Because, I'm used to that, The team would have they would have been sellers at the deadline, bringing in new assets and bringing in new hope, just to start the cycle all over again. But at least I would have accepted it as the norm. But this run they went on, not only does it suck in the short term, but it sucks in the long term too. There is a decent possibility that the Jackets lose Marchment and Coyle for nothing. But I'll get into that more in a bit. It's just absolute misery now, again, for all us passionate fans who've stuck with this team through it all, year after year. I've honestly wondered what it's like for fans of a team like the Avalanche, for example, to start a season almost 100% certain their team would make the playoffs. I mean, there's not an Avalanche fan out there who was thinking their team had a chance to miss the playoffs. They're not wondering if their team will make it. They're wondering how far they will go. It must be so nice, and I can only imagine what that feels like. And I apologize if my dog barking coming through. If you've heard this podcast before, I just record this in my house, my home office. Nothing special. I have dogs that bark. I have a wife and a daughter who watch TV in the room next door, so nothing fancy here. So let's talk about the collapse. 2 wins after fighting and battling and clawing their way up to second place. 2 wins. That's all they had. After all that fight, after that huge battle, 2 wins. And they lost their last 6 home games. That's just crazy. It's like the Jackets couldn't handle the success. It's like they peaked at that moment. And the lack of wins wasn't the only pathetic stat, okay? I mean, how about those 2 games? One was against the Hurricanes, and the other was against the Winnipeg Jets. Against the Hurricanes, they registered a total of 10 shots. Total. And of those 10 shots, only 2 were from the forwards. That was an NHL record, I believe. How could any NHL team, never mind one that was desperate for wins and fighting for their playoff lives, how can a team like that go an entire game with only 2 shots on goal coming from their forwards? You're the Blue Jackets. That's how you do it. You find new ways to disappoint. Then you'd think that was a wake-up call, right? That would wake this team up. 10 shots on goal. No doubt chewed out by Bones in the locker room. You'd think they would be utterly embarrassed and then go out the next game and fire everything plus the kitchen sink at the Winnipeg goaltender. Nah, not these Blue Jackets. No, they go out and follow up with a whopping 16 shots. So yeah, 26 shots on goal total over 2 games when you are supposed to be playing desperate hockey, fighting for your playoff lives. And then let's talk about the referees, okay? Before I go any further, let me just say that I am in no way, shape, or form suggesting the refs cost the Blue Jackets a playoff spot or even specific games, all right? I'm just saying the refs have seemed to have it in for the Jackets. And not having to deal with the striped shirts in addition to their regular woes, that would have been nice. There was that missed Sebastian Aho slew foot. Now I didn't see it, but I heard the refs even admitted that they missed that one, but I'm not sure because like I said, I didn't see it. And then I cannot believe this has not been talked about more anywhere in media. The worst goaltender interference call I have ever seen. Against the Montreal Canadiens, Boone Jenner scores a goal, and the ref signals that it was, in fact, a goal. But then, the goaltender, I forget how to pronounce his name, Dobesh, I think it's Dobesh. He complains to the ref, and then all of a sudden, there's a conversation between the officials, and then magically, it is not a goal due to goaltender interference. But they called it a goal. How do you reverse a good goal call on the ice without a review? And then I see the replay. Not a single Blue Jacket even touched the goaltender. It wasn't even close. So I'm thinking, okay, Jackets are going to challenge this and win the easiest challenge in the history of goaltender interference challenges. But they don't challenge. Now, I know the point is moot because the Jackets actually won that game, but I remain fascinated by the situation. Don't NHL teams employ video coaches? I don't know what their official title would be, but people who man the video monitors and, for this exact kind of thing. I mean, they somehow know exactly when to challenge an offsides call where the player's skate crosses the blue line like a centimeter before the puck. I mean, those challenges are like 99% successful. And yet they couldn't see that this was obviously not goaltender interference. They couldn't get word to Bones that he absolutely needed to challenge this. And I know he said he didn't want to risk it. But when it is that blatantly obvious, I just don't understand it. Then there was the Boston game. At one point, the Bruins had not 5, not 6, but 7 skaters, in addition to the goaltender, on the ice and played the puck. And there was no penalty. How is that possible? How is it possible the Jackets can be the victims of both the worst goaltender interference call in history and then possibly the worst missed too many men call in history on back-to-back nights? I was fit to be tied watching those games, especially that Boston game. Because speaking of that game, the Jackets needed that win. If they beat the Bruins, it's possible they'd be in the playoffs right now. They were playing at home in front of a sellout crowd of passionate fans cheering them on against a backup goaltender, against the team that had already clinched a playoff spot and didn't absolutely need the win. Against a team that was resting 5 of their regular players. And the Jackets still couldn't get it done. They let Boston's fourth line walk all over them. They scored all 3 of their goals. And of course, Sean Corrali, former Jacket, had a point on all 3 of those goals. Korpisalo, he shut them down. Save after save. And then of course you had Andrew Peeke and Jordan Harris playing defense. So it's nothing like having your playoff hopes destroyed by some former players that you decided were no longer good enough for your team. It's just so incredibly frustrating. Well, I have seen some people say that the Jackets were just too tired, too exhausted. They had been in playoff mode for 3 months already. They were spent. And then the condensed schedule due to the Olympics was just too much for them. Well, you know what I say? I call bull excrement. Every other team in the NHL was playing the same condensed schedule. The playoff teams, the teams that are currently in the playoffs right now, they seem to handle it just fine. But the Jackets couldn't. And let's not forget that the Jackets only sent 2 players to the Olympics. And one is, Elvis, I guess, can be considered their backup goaltender now. So you can't play the Olympics card here. Okay? Virtually the whole roster got a 3-week rest. So don't give me that the Olympics played a part. It really didn't. The team just fell apart, plain and simple. And now others argue that the losses of Damon Severson and Matthew Olivier were the catalysts of the collapse. And there's some truth in that, okay? I'll give them that. But on most other teams, those 2 losses would be overcomable losses. And I don't know if that's a word, overcomable. Good teams would find a way to get past that. The Jackets didn't. They crumbled. But the problems didn't start in the last 3 weeks, or whatever it was, 3 weeks or so of the season, as we all know. All right, the team just wasn't playing up to expectations. That, of course, led to the firing of Dean Evison. But I want to talk about what went wrong with this season, okay? We're here now. Let's talk about how we got here, all right? Last season, many fans lamented that if only the Jackets had average goaltending, they would be in a playoff spot. Well, that might have been true last season, but this season, they got that. They got above average goaltending, in my opinion. Statistically speaking, Jet Greaves was actually one of the better goaltenders in the NHL this year. Yet, the Jackets struggled for long stretches of the season. Why? Well, I'll tell you at least my opinion. Their offense, okay? Their offense regressed everywhere. Marchenko's goal total reduced by 5. Fantilli's reduced by 7. Monahan by 6. And of course, Kent Johnson by 17. And I'll get to him in a bit. But if you look at this roster, there's no one dynamic. You know, there's no elite scoring threat. And let's be honest, they have a super high ceiling, but right now, at this moment, Fantilli and Marchenko would be second liners on a really good playoff team right now. And speaking of second lines, I believe the Jackets' second line was one of the biggest downfalls of this team. Not once this season did they have a second line that had good chemistry and gave the team consistent secondary scoring. And I'll talk about that in a bit too. So you have this decrease in offensive production, but better goaltending. And unfortunately, it looks like the Jackets needed both to make the playoffs this season. And they didn't have it. But that's not the only major issue, okay? The other is the uncanny ability to close out. I said that wrong. The uncanny inability. The inability to close out games. 21 games. 21 games where the Jackets blew a third period lead. That is insane. If they closed out a couple of those games, this episode is all about the Jackets in the playoffs and the excitement that comes with it. With finally getting back to the promised land. But no. With all those squandered leads, the Jackets, they're not a playoff team. They pretended to be one from January to March after Rick Bowness was hired. But once that newness wore off, once things got tough, as Rick Bowness said, it was back to reality. A sad, pathetic, frustrating, embarrassing reality. I mean, how do you fix a team who blows 21 leads, 21 third period leads? Do you hire a sports psychologist? I honestly don't know the answer to that question. The Jackets front office are making a heck of a lot more money than me, so they should be the ones figuring that out right now. All right, so now the question we Jackets fans seem to ask at the end of every season, because after 25 years, this team has only made the playoffs 6 times. 6 times in 25 years. That is so sad. Pathetic, honestly. So let me start with something pretty obvious. Changes need to be made. Don Waddell he basically ran the same team back this season from last season. A few changes, yes, but for the most part, the last season, or I could even say the last 2 seasons, featured predominantly the same players. But my question is not only what do they do, it's how do they do it? And I shall explain. Let's first start with what needs to be done. Could this team be stripped down to the bare bones and start fresh again? Maybe. Maybe the team needs to keep just a few players and the rest ship him out and restart. However, I honestly don't think that is what needs to be done. I hate to say it, but if the team had someone dynamic, someone with elite offense, like Johnny Gaudreau, I think that would have got us at least into the playoffs this year. Not a Stanley Cup, but a playoff spot. And unfortunately, that's not something we can do anything about, all right? We unfortunately lost Johnny, and there's nothing we can do about that. So this team really needs to add an elite forward to the roster. Someone to maybe play on the top line with Fantilli and Marchenko. Someone maybe to elevate their games. But the question is, how do you do that? The Jackets do not have many assets to trade for an elite player. No real high-end prospects that they could offer, at least in my opinion. The cupboard is pretty bare. There are no elite, unrestricted free agents this summer either. And with the salary cap going up, other teams who, let's face it, at this point are much more desirable destinations, they can lure any big names their way. And I'm not saying all other forwards should stay. All right, a bigger shakeup might be needed. But a top line, high scoring winger would sure work wonders for this team. In addition to that, I think the defense needs a little shakeup as well. But how do you do that? So allow me to play Blue Jackets GM here for just a little bit, okay? At this point, you're not trading Werenski or Matejchuk, okay? Well, maybe. Okay, I'll come back to that, okay? But let's say at this point, let's just say we're not trading Werenski or Matejchuk. You can't trade Severson due to his no trade clause, and he has actually come around quite a bit. You worked pretty well with Z. Actually, have really come around to kind of liking him. And you can't trade Provorov because of his no trade clause. He would actually be my number one choice to trade. I hope beyond hope that he decides he doesn't like where this team is going and requests a trade. Pipe dreams though, right? Anyway, that only leaves you two spots. Eric Goodbranson, please let him walk. All right, Don Waddell better not resign this guy. They need a younger, big, physical defenseman who makes less mistakes than Eric Goodbranson. And then that leaves Dante Fabro, who does not have a no-trade clause. So there are your only two logical moves right now for the top six defenders. Let Gutty walk and try to trade Fabro. That's what I would do if I was in the GM shoes. And I'm not sure what you can get for Fabro with his contract, but Waddell should be trying, in my humble opinion. And it's not that Fabro has played absolutely horrible. It's just a shakeup is needed, and someone has to go. Top four probably not going to happen, so you have to trade one of your bottom 2-6. Now, a moment ago, I said the team is not trading Zach, but hear me out here, okay? Just hear me out for a second. Maybe it's worth exploring. Not saying jump right into it, but maybe it's worth exploring. His value is sky high right now. Norris Trophy candidate, team scoring leader, Olympic gold medalist. He would bring in an absolute haul. And if the Jackets truly wanted to shake things up, oh man, I have to admit, I would hate to see Zach Werenski go, but maybe long term, it wouldn't end up being a bad thing. And the Jackets showed this season that they could hold their own with Zach out of the lineup. When he was injured, they did well without him. And if Matejchuk keeps progressing, the Jackets may already have his replacement on the roster. Not to mention Jackson Smith and a couple other names on defense are coming up slowly through the pipeline. So let me just clarify, though, okay? I'm not advocating for the team to trade Zach Werenski. All I'm saying is that if Don Waddell could score a king's ransom in return, it might be worth looking into. With what happened at Rick Bonus's press conference after the last game, it's obvious to me that there could be some big changes in store for this team, and maybe some big surprises too. So with that in mind, I honestly would not be shocked if trading Zach was one of them. Moving on to some other players, all right? Elvis Merzlikins, I honestly don't care either way. It'll be the last year of his contract, and with Greaves kind of taking the reins and leading the way, I don't feel he is helping or hindering this team significantly too much in either direction. He can be the backup if need be, but if you can find an upgrade, I would say you of course do that and try to unload Elvis. Now, press conference today, when they announced the Bone signing, which I'll get to, Don Waddell mentioned that he was happy going forward with both Elvis and Greaves. So it doesn't look like they're going to be shopping him, but you never know. Okay, I mean, when a reporter asks a question about him, they can't say, "Oh yeah, we got to dump his butt." You know, they're not going to say that. They're going to toe the company line, show support for their players, especially if they're going to trade him. They're not going to say bad things about him. All right, moving on. As for the other forwards, I'll start by saying this, all right? There is, in my opinion, there is only one untouchable forward, and that is Adam Fantilli. That is it. Some will argue that Kirill Marchenko is untouchable, and I disagree. If someone wanted him and a trade gave the Jackets a significant upgrade to Marchenko, well, heck yeah, I'd do it, of course. That said, though, I'm pretty sure they want to keep Marchenko, and I'm happy to have him back. I love the guy, especially for his off-ice stuff. He is hilarious. I don't want him to be traded, okay? I'm just saying if someone made an offer I couldn't refuse, I wouldn't refuse. And I'm going to save Kent Johnson for last because I have a lot to say about him specifically. But let's go to some other players, starting with our unrestricted free agents. Out of the three big forwards, I guess I should say, Coyle, Marchment, and Jenner, I think the most important to sign, believe it or not, is Marchment. Okay, I think he's a solid middle six player who brings size and some nastiness to the team. And I think the team needs that nastiness. So sign him if he is willing to stay. And as for Coyle, he had a career year. Even Don Waddell said he exceeded expectations. But he's 34 years old. All right, he meant a huge amount to this team, but he's 34 years old. And the team needs to get younger, not older. And although I would really like to have Coyle back, I'm afraid he's going to command a lot of salary and even in like a longer term contract. And we learned firsthand how players on this team tend to take a step back after a successful season. All right, so with Coyle's age, he is most likely going to regress next year, okay? I mean think about that, okay? He's going to be 35 next year. Do you really see him like taking another step forward? I don't. I think this was a great year for him, but now to expect that again, I don't think is very realistic. And how is he going to look at 36 or 37? My guess is that it will not be worth the salary amount he will want. So if you can bring him back cheap on a short-term deal, do it. Okay? But if not, well done. You stupidly held on to your UFAs at the deadline, so you have to just cut your losses and deal with it. And I hate saying that, but the Jackets' best, most consistent line this season was Coyle, Sillinger, and Olivier. And I'm just going to say it, one of the best third lines in the league, if you ask me. And I would hate to break that up again, but this team has to get younger, okay? Someone else will have to fill that role if Coyle leaves. And it's not an absurd idea, okay? And that brings me to Boone Jenner. And I'm sorry to say this to all the huge Boone Jenner fans listening, but it is time. It is time for the team to let Boone Jenner walk. Now maybe if he agrees to a very small contract and knows his role, that is now a fourth line role, maybe. But I think his departure from the locker room will help to change that culture a bit more. The captain needs to be someone else like Werenski or Olivier. Time to move on from Boone Jenner and heck, give him a chance to win somewhere else. I mean, I like the guy. I really do. He has put in so much time for this organization, even off the ice, for the community. He deserves a chance to win somewhere else. He really does. He deserves a chance at success, something that he has not had with the Jackets. My thing is, Don has to make a choice here. You either bring back Coyle or Jenner, not both. If you can't bring back Coyle, then I don't think it makes sense. Well, I should have said that the other way around. Sorry. If you can bring back Coyle, then I don't think it makes sense to also bring back Jenner. Because I'll say it again, the team needs to get younger. But if you don't bring back Coyle, then maybe consider signing Jenner, as I said, to a very low contract to play on the fourth line, with that understanding. But most importantly, you need to remove the C from his jersey. It is time for new leadership. Give it to Zach. Give it to Olivier. Give it to Fantilli. I don't know. But it's time for a new direction, in my opinion. Or, okay, don't give it to anybody. Rick Bowness can say, okay, we're starting over here. If you want to be captain, earn it. Show me who wants to be captain. Blue Jackets did that before. Did that with, before Nick Foligno became captain. Sean Monahan, he's next. He also has a no-trade clause. So he's pretty much stuck here unless he requests a trade. And I'm going to say something here. I hope this doesn't sound terrible, but honestly, I hope he does. I think it's reasonable to say that the constant reminders of Johnny Gaudreau at Nationwide Arena may be tough to deal with day in and day out. Perhaps a change of scenery would serve him best. But again, he has to make that trade request. I guess Don could approach him and ask him if he'd be willing, but for the most part, I don't know. I just kind of think that would be kind of a jerk move after everything he's been through. I don't know. But Monty was a shell of himself this season. And a big reason why this team did not make the playoffs, if I might be so bold to say. What do Voronkov, Johnson, and Garland all have in common? Other than that they had disappointed, that they disappointed this season? Well, they all spent a decent amount of time with Sean Monahan as their center. So I'm not saying that Monty was the direct cause of their struggles, but it certainly didn't help when your center slumped badly pretty much all season. And it's not going to help you get out of your slump. Now, maybe Monahan was the main issue all along. Maybe it really makes me concerned about the number 2 center position next season. What seemed to be a position of strength with this team down our lineup now seems suddenly thin. Because I remember thinking last summer, man, this team is stacked at center now. And they even have Caden Lindstrom coming up soon. Well, now, after just one season, it seems like it's a position of weakness. If Coyle does not return and Monty does not snap back into form, this team may be in trouble. I mean, there are rumors that both he and Marchenko have been battling significant injuries. And I certainly don't hope for injuries on any Blue Jackets, but I do hope that was the case and that they recover completely for next season and have a bounce back year. If not, then perhaps Waddell should be exploring finding a new number 2 center somehow. And what about Dmitry Voronkov? In my opinion, he is the prime trade candidate right now. He needs to be traded. Okay, if the Jackets are going to make some trades, he should be the bait right now. This team keeps finding out year in and year out that he disappears during the second half of the season. And he refuses to use his giant 6'5" frame the way he should. He should be punishing opponents constantly. He should be making their lives miserable in front of their net. But he doesn't. He plays like a 5'11", 6-foot winger who is slow and not physical enough. So I think the time has come to move him. And I know a lot of people disagree and say, similar to Kent Johnson, we have to be patient and he'll turn things around, but you got to make some moves somewhere. And I think he's the person to start with. And other teams may consider him a valuable asset and a worthwhile project. So package him with a draft pick or two and bring in some help. Okay, who else? Cole Sillinger. Cole Sillinger has become a sturdy, reliable forward. I say you keep him. Obviously keep Olivier. Isaac Lundstrom, he annoys me every time I look at him because I feel he was overvalued by Dean Evison, and he is overvalued now by Rick Bowness. But I will die on the hill that says Corrali and Danforth were better options than Lundstrom. I wish they kept one of those instead of Lundstrom. And I just wish Rick Bowness and Dean Evison, for that matter, didn't think he was an option on that first line. I'm tired of seeing guys like him playing there where he does not belong. He was brought in to be the fourth line center. He belongs on the fourth line. Danton Heinen. He played pretty well considering he was a two-time waiver wire cast-off this season, by the way. And, just like a throw-in to the Chinnikov trade. But honestly, he can easily be replaced. So I would let him walk as well. Remember, we're trying to shake things up here, remember? And I knocked on the guy a lot, Danton Heinen, okay? I mean, like I said, he was a throw-in for the Chinnikov trade. But Bones seemed to really, really like him. And I think he was solid, but nothing that would justify going out of your way to re-sign. Again, in my opinion. I consider him, I've told some people this, that I think he is this season's Zach Aston Reese. You know, Czar played well enough that Waddell decided to hand him another contract, albeit a cheap one, and he just wound up in the minors most of the season. I can see the exact same thing happening to Heinen. Waddell will be like, oh, you know, Heinen played so well for us, so let's bring him back. And then next season, he gets passed on the depth chart and gets to toil away in the minors. Next up, Miles Wood. I like that he plays with reckless abandon, but that's pretty much all he has. No hands, no excellent playmaking skills, average shot, definitely not a high hockey IQ. His contract may prove to be untradeable, but if someone wants him, I say jump on it. You know, he has a modified no trade clause. The team needs to get younger, like I said before, and he started off really well. And I was like, oh, you know, this guy was he's been a good addition to this team. But then he got injured, and I don't know if that's what changed the way he played, but he definitely wasn't the same once he came back. Oh yeah, Connor Garland. Okay. Oh boy. When he came aboard, I was very happy, all right? For about 3 whole games, it looked like he might be that missing piece on the second line. Well, he wasn't, all right? He brought energy. He obviously had hustle, but no real scoring punch, and that's what this team needs. The Jackets already have a great third line, so I would say don't put Garland there, and he doesn't belong on the fourth. So I was about to say that the Jackets should explore trading Garland, okay? Because if he's not going to play on your second line, he doesn't belong on your first line. And if he's not going to play on your second line, there's no spot for him on the third, and he's not a fourth liner either. But then I looked at his contract. Holy crap. He is signed until 2032. And he has a no movement clause until 2030. And get this, as it stands right now, with this current roster, he is the team's highest paid forward, making $6 million a year. I'll say it again, holy crap. I mean, who looks at our team right at this moment and says, Connor Garland's the highest paid forward? I don't think I would have been nearly as excited as I was when we acquired him had I known about his contract status. I did not look that up. I did not do my research, I guess. Now, I've heard that the rollover date for a contract is June 30th. And right now, until June 30th, Connor Garland does not have any trade protection. So before the 2026-2027 stipulations kick in, maybe Don can work a miracle and trade him before that. Okay, and with his contract, oh my gosh, I just don't see that happening. I was honestly blown away when I looked up his contract info. I was shocked. And I think a big concern now is Garland and KJ, who again, I'll talk about in a moment. Do the Jackets really want him, KJ, and Connor Garland, 2 undersized forwards in their top 6? More on that shortly. But a quick recap. So trade bait at forward, I believe, is Voronkov. If you can do it quick, Garland, Wood, Lundstrom maybe, if anybody wants them. But that is not exactly a huge batch of available, highly sought after players. So this is why I asked, how? How do you do it? How do you make this team better, make this team younger? How do you do that with the current contract situation on this team? Waddell has a lot to do this summer. And that brings me finally to Kent Johnson, the Kent Johnson conundrum. I have talked a lot about KJ because I am fascinated by how his pro hockey career is progressing. Last year, he was up to 24 goals and was almost a point per game player. Saying that he underperformed this season would be the understatement of the year. He pretty much fell off a cliff, hit the ground cracked open, and he fell even further down. Just absolutely unbelievable. What happened to this kid? From 24 goals to 7. Really? With his level of talent, 5th overall pick? I've read that he had an interesting offseason last summer. Now again, this is what I've read on the internet, so please do not take what I say as fact. But I read that he played a lot of roller hockey. I read that he did not spend a lot of time in the weight room, that he got married, and religion became a much more significant part of his life. And I'm not saying any of those are bad things, but I'm saying that perhaps they have taken a good chunk of his focus away from being a better hockey player in the NHL. Whatever happened, Kent Johnson was a completely different player this year and a completely ineffective one. How can the most skilled player on your roster, Don Waddell's words, be a healthy scratch so often? This is the 4th coach, I believe, that Kent Johnson has had, and the 4th coach that agreed that he should be a healthy scratch. So the prevailing thought that I'm seeing in various locations on the internet, chat rooms or whatever they're called, Reddit groups, social media threads, is that the prevailing thought is we got to trade KJ. But I have to say I wholeheartedly disagree with this idea. Number one, he had one bad year. Okay, there's a good chance, not a great one, but a good chance he will regain his focus and bounce back next season, especially if he follows what the Blue Jackets ask him to do, like what they expect of him this summer. Number two, he is making pennies with his current contract. Are you going to find a better player at that price? I don't think you will. Number three, with next season being a contract year for him, he should be motivated to improve and earn a better contract for the following season. Number four, he is obviously offensively gifted. I mean, you can't really deny that. Do you really want to give up an offensively gifted player to another team where you know he will light it up? Have you not learned from the Igor Chinnikov trade? It is almost a guarantee that KJ would flourish somewhere else. And number five, his trade value is super low right now. Is what the Jackets get in return for him really going to outweigh what he could potentially become? There is a massive risk involved in trading him, and I certainly don't want to regret losing another player who becomes awesome somewhere else, like Chinnikov or Jacob Voracek. So maybe this time, for once, we show extreme patience. And again, I'm just worried now that with Connor Garland in the mix, Don is he's gonna want to trade one of his undersized forwards. And as I discussed earlier, Garland's contract will make it very difficult for him to find any takers. So that leaves Kent Johnson. I'm just very concerned they're going to give up on KJ far too quickly, and he'll turn into a prolific NHL scorer. So my opinion is hold on to him. And based on Don Waddell and Rick Bowness's press conference, it seems like they're going to hold on to him. Don described him as the most skilled player the team has. They said he was 12 pounds lighter this season compared to last. They seem to have told him what we all hoped. Put on some weight, build up some muscle, build up some strength, and then come back in the fall ready to take on a larger, dependable role with the team. And if he can't handle that, then you trade his sorry butt. Trade his sorry butt next season, during the season. I also wonder why the team didn't consider sending him to the AHL. Because they did it once before, and it seemed to help the guy. It allowed him to regain his confidence and his scoring touch. And I know his contract allowed it. So I just wonder why that wasn't a considered option this year. Maybe it was, and the team had their reasons for not doing it. I don't know. And my last topic for today, Rick Bowness's press conference after the season finale. Wow. What fireworks there, okay? I have to say I was not expecting that. But I'm thrilled that it happened, okay? First of all, he started talking and was almost in tears. If that doesn't show that this man truly cares about his work and truly wants this team to succeed, I don't know what will. And second of all, I am glad that he said what he said, publicly calling out his team, talking about their drive and their compete level. Now, first he said that the team didn't care, and I don't think that's the case. And he later corrected himself, or at least he specified that he meant that the team didn't hate losing enough. That I wholeheartedly agree with. It resonated with me because one of my favorite TV shows is Shoresy. And if you've seen it, you'll totally understand what I mean. In season 1, that was the one thing that he felt was needed to turn his hockey team around. He had to make the team hate to lose, had to get them to realize that they hated to lose. How his team did it is, I don't know if the Jackets can do it. Shoresy brought in 7 new players. That's a big change. And I'm not saying the Jackets need to bring in 7 new players, but I do think this press conference signals that there needs to be some big changes, and there will be some big changes. Not a tweak, not rolling it back the way it, as is, which was pretty much the strategy this season. No, there needs to be some big changes. What those changes are going to be remains to be seen. But let me tell you what I think needs to be done, in no particular order. As I said earlier, a new captain is needed. Whether Boone returns or not, someone else should wear the C. Or perhaps no one gets the C. Let's see who earns it. Okay, remember, like I said, the Jackets, they did that one year, the season before Nick Foligno became captain. So maybe the Jackets go that route. Number 2, an elite scoring winger needs to be added. How to do that, I couldn't tell you. The Jackets are not exactly stocked with tradable assets at this point. Number 3, fix the second line. Beginning with a bona fide number 2 center. Can Monty be that guy again? I don't know. Can a trade be made for one? Could Luca Del Belbalou step in? I don't know the answer, but that second line needs to be fixed. A significant part of this team's failure was the lack of a consistent scoring second line. I think the third line was more of a threat this season than the second. Number 4, shore up the defense, all right? A big shutdown guy would be great. Just please don't bring back Eric Goodbranson. This team has to get away from bringing back pretty much the same group and expecting better results. And then, number 5, bring up Vogelhuber to assist Bonus. Or somehow get Mark Letestu to come over. And I forget where he's coaching now, but I'm not sure how his contract situation works, but somehow get him here. Because now Bonus signed a contract today. He's coming back. Let Vogelhuber or Letestu learn from Bonus, and then when Bones is ready to go back to retirement, boom, you have your new, young, fresh-faced, motivated head coach. So there you have it. That's what I think needs to happen. My fear is, though, that considering this team's history, the wrong decisions will just be made again. And even if they make the right decisions, and this team improves next season, and by the way, they did improve points-wise this season, and the Jackets would have made the playoffs if they were in the Western Conference. But anyway, if this team improves next season, which team in the East currently in a playoff spot falls out, like drops out of the playoffs next year? Who takes a step back? I feel like Tampa and Carolina are not going to take a step back, or at least not enough to become a non-playoff team. I feel they are locks. I feel that Montreal and Buffalo are on such a high trajectory and will only get better. So there's half the teams right there, pretty much guaranteed a playoff spot. So which of the following 4 teams currently in a playoff spot will regress enough to give up their spot? Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Ottawa, or Boston? I feel like Ottawa continues to improve, so we have to hope that Pittsburgh and Boston's resurgence was just a flash in the pan and that Philly caught lightning in a bottle. Plus, you know that Jersey is not going to be down for long. Islanders have a new coach and are always going to be tough. Panthers are going to rebound from injury. I know they're not in the Metro Division, but they're in the conference and might fight for a playoff spot again next season. Red Wings had similar issues with, kind of falling off at the end of the year there. Washington, they were close too. They finished ahead of the Jackets. So what I'm saying is that next season, we Jackets fans will have our usual high hopes. But it seems like it's inevitable that the Eastern Conference will be an absolute gauntlet again. So that's all we can do now. That's all we can do as Blue Jackets fans. Look forward to next season. Again. And man, am I tired of it. 25 years of existence and they've only made the playoffs 6 times. I mean, how is that even possible? Half the teams in the league make the playoffs every year. It is quite an amazing feat of incompetence and just, a black eye for the franchise. And what really bothers me is that there is nothing we can do. Like, as fans, there's nothing we can do except wait and hope. I mean, if you're passionate about collecting, like antiques, you go antique shopping and buy antiques. If you're passionate about collecting baseball cards, you buy baseball cards, you collect them. If you're passionate about music, you go and listen to music or create music. But if you were passionate about a pathetic NHL hockey team in Central Ohio, or anywhere really, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do to scratch the playoff itch except wait and wait and wait and hope that this team will finally turn things around. Considering their track record, though, it's tough to be optimistic. I've already told my family, All right, I told my brother and sister, my wife, my kids, do not buy me any more Blue Jackets merchandise. And I myself will not be spending another dime on this team. No clothing, no hats, no memorabilia, not even game tickets, all right? I will not go to a game if I have to buy the tickets. I'm not giving this team another cent until they become a playoff level team. I feel like I have given them enough. I've given them enough of my money and my time in the last 25 years that it's time for them to start doing stuff for me. I want the enjoyment of cheering for my favorite team in the playoffs. And I don't think that's too much to ask. I don't think that's too much to ask for after a quarter of a century of existence. I mean, seriously? 6 times in 25 years? That's just crazy. And for people out there, like my wife, people who just don't understand how a person like me can be so bummed every year because, quote unquote, it's just a sport. It's not just a sport to us, okay? It is a passion. We put our heart and soul into our favorite teams. We want to be proud of them. There are plenty of fans out there who are more casual about it, but that's not me. It's just not, it's not just a sport to me. It's something I love. It's what I've loved my entire life. My body right now, as an almost 50-year-old man, is falling apart. And I still find a way to play beer league hockey every season. And I'm going to keep playing hockey until my body no longer allows me to. I watch every Jackets game I can. I even got a part-time job at Hobart Arena in Troy, Ohio, because I just love being around the game. I love being around hockey. I love being at the rink. So yeah, that is why the Jackets' seemingly constant futility hurts so much and affects people like me so much. It is our passion. And unfortunately, unlike those other things, we have no control. We have no control over this passion, over how our team performs. All we have is hope. And we did get some hope today. We got some good news today, all right, when it was announced at a press conference that Rick Bowness would in fact be back next season. 1-year contract. And I really like this move, okay? I think it's the right move. Let's see what can be done with a full season of Bones. He said all the right things at the press conference. So now, let's see if he can back up his words. No decision yet on the rest of the coaching staff, though, okay? But Bones said his assistants did a great job this season, like when he came aboard. But trying to read between the lines a little bit here, I didn't necessarily get the impression that he was confirming they would return. So we'll have to see what happens there. All right, before I go, I'm going to leave you with a thought. All right, and this is just a general hockey thought here, okay? So I just ranted about the Blue Jackets, so now just a different hockey thought here, okay? You might think I'm crazy for saying this, but I truly mean it. Bring back ties. Yep, I said it. Get rid of the stupid shootouts. I hate them. It was a nice gimmick, but it's not right. It's not right that teams earn an extra point for winning a skills competition event for a team sport game. Extend overtime to 10 minutes, and if it ends in a tie, it ends in a tie. Okay, both teams get a point. Boom, done. That's how it used to be back in the 80s and early 90s. But people will argue that the players will be so tired. I disagree. If they play their full roster and go the entire overtime, an extra 5 minutes, that's just an extra 1 or 2 shifts more per player. That's it. They're professional athletes. They can handle it. And while I'm talking about it, 3-on-3 overtime has gotten stale. The teams have just adapted to it so well. All right. So my thought is either adjust the rules to prevent the players from constantly circling back and regrouping and promoting more possession changes, or at least change it back to 4-on-4. Just a parting thought there that I might dive into more another time. All right, my friends, the season is over. We are finally put out of our misery. So, with that in mind, this will be my last episode for a while. Once the offseason really kicks in, we start getting some trades and free agency news, I'll hop back on here. I'll hop back on here when there's more to discuss. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions, thoughts, or suggestions for future topics, or if you just want to chat about the Jackets. All right, it's going to be a long summer. I'm always up to talk Jackets to pass the time of the off season. So please find me on social media like Blue Sky and Instagram. My handle is WhalerJacket, or you can email me whalerjacket@gmail.com. Thanks for listening to Boom and Gloom. Hope you join me again sometime. Have a great start to the summer. And maybe next time you hear my voice, we'll have some good Blue Jackets news to talk about. Until then, take care. And I'm going to say what I always say to close out the show, even though I'm not really pleased with the team right now and I'm not very happy, not very enthusiastic, but they're still my favorite team, okay? And unless they get moved somewhere else, they'll stay my favorite team. I'm going to keep wearing my Blue Jacket stuff, going to support them. But like I said earlier, I'm not buying any more new stuff. But anyway, I'm still going to say this. I close every episode with this, so go Jackets.